All right, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for a deep dive into the Activate Anywhere community. My name is Jeffrey Song. You'll be hearing from me a little bit later. I'm the fellowship manager for this community. Just gonna go over a few logistics before we get started. We're gonna begin with just kind of a quick overview of the Activate Anywhere program, the community, what we're about, especially uniquely within the Activate kind of network. And then we have our three esteemed panelists, three current fellows who are going to be sharing with you all a little bit about their experience within Anywhere, and then we'll have most of the time will be reserved for your questions, so we can get those answered for you all during this webinar. During this kind of beginning presentation and intro portion, we'll ask if any questions come up, please put them in the chat. However, during the actual Q&A portion, we'll happy to take any questions by you unmuting yourselves or also in the chat as well. But for this time, just trying to prevent a little bit of the crosstalk. So please put any questions that you have in the chat and we'll address them during the Q&A. All right, so that being said, I'm gonna turn it now over to Hannah Mernon to get us started.
Awesome, thank you, Jeffrey. Welcome to all of you. My name is Hannah Mernon. I'm the managing director for the Activate Anywhere community. So I'll share a little bit about what Activate Anywhere is and sort of what we're trying to do and why, and then we'll turn it over to the fellows, which is probably mostly what you're interested in. So Activate as an organization, we are a nonprofit whose mission is to empower scientists to reinvent the world by bringing their research to market. So we are a fellowship program that supports scientists who are becoming entrepreneurs. So taking a technology and bringing it to commercial reality. I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like practically, but we are now spread across 4 communities. We were born in Berkeley. Activate Berkeley was the beginnings of Activate. We've been active there since 2015. The second site we expanded to was Boston. And then the third physical site was Activate New York. And then most recently, Activate Anywhere was born. And the purpose of Activate Anywhere was in recognition of a few things. One, that there are entrepreneurs doing amazing things all across our country, not just in Berkeley, Boston, or New York. And 2, that much of what Activate does in supporting scientists and entrepreneurs could potentially be successfully done through a distributed model. And so the first cohort for Activate Anywhere started last year. Some of them are on the call today, so you'll hear a little bit about what that has looked like. But we are designed to support teams across the US wherever it makes sense for them to be building their companies. The fellowship itself, just to give you a very brief overview of what does it actually mean and what do we do when you're an Activate Fellow. So there are a few components to it. It's a 2-year fellowship where we supply the fellows with a stipend, so a salary for the fellows over the 2 years, as well as health insurance, travel allowance, professional development money, things like that. We provide $100,000 for R&D for your company. That goes directly to the company. And then we have other access to flexible capital that we can get more into, but we work with venture partners who can provide access to capital for you. We do a lot of education around entrepreneurship. So throughout the initial months of the program, we have something called Elements of Entrepreneurship, where each week we're reviewing topics that are of relevance to you as you're building your company. So things like, what's a term sheet? How do you think about setting the culture for your company? How do you hire? All of the things that will become important to you. This also often involves speakers. So bringing in other hard tech founders, other folks who have gone down parts of the journey who can be important supports as you're thinking about different decisions you're facing. And then lastly, the big part of it is just the community. So the Activate team, so both Jeffrey and I, who are here to mentor and help you in any way we can, as well as all of the folks within our extended community. So a bunch of other hard tech founders and scientists and engineers and technologists who can help you with various aspects, as well as the fellow community. So, I think a big part of it is just having other people who are going through some of the same things you are, who can answer like, what software are you using for payroll, or how do I file my taxes, or, how do I decide when I should take VC funding, or whatever the question may be, or I'm feeling really frustrated today. Like, can we talk about it? So a big part of it is just having that community. On a sort of practical basis, what this means in terms of your time, we have some activities that are weekly. So I talked a little bit about this already in terms of having programming and community time. So we have founders talks, panels, opportunities to meet with investors, other folks, other partners, things like that. We try and set some time for just sort of unstructured discussion and social time with your other fellow members, as well as alumni, who are people who have graduated from the fellowship, of whom there are now, I think, 130 or something. So there's a number of alumni fellow, given how long we've been operating. Those all happen weekly. We then have monthly or maybe bi-weekly one-on-one check-ins. So I meet with each of the fellows within the Anywhere cohort roughly every 2 weeks as it makes sense. And the goal of that is just to see where you're running into problems, how I can help, what decisions need to be made, what things are sort of top of mind. We have quarterly visits quarterly meetings where each fellow company has a quarterly meeting, with the goal of that is to basically zoom out and talk about the state of the company for the last quarter and where you're headed. And so it's a lot about, what decisions do we need to make? Where do we need discussions? We encourage you to bring advisors to those meetings. It's a way to, it's almost like a board meeting, but it's a way to start thinking about how do you sort of understand the whole picture of your company, not just the technology piece that you might be developing. And then for Activate Anywhere specifically, once a quarter, we get all the Activate Anywhere fellows together in person. So we kicked off the program in June with a retreat in California. And then our next quarterly meeting together is actually in a couple of weeks in New York City during Climate Week. So we'll all be in New York City at the Activate New York site, doing a bunch of meetings, as well as just some fun, like getting to spend some time with each other. We have a few things that happen annually. As I mentioned, we started the program with a retreat in June, so that happens every year. We also have what we call our reflection meetings. So we call them the T0, T1, and T2 meetings, where it's more about your personal career development and thinking about what you want to get out of the next 2 years and how do we enable that for you. And then we have an Activate Summit, which is sort of a gathering of the full extended community of Activate folks. So it lets us both just have a nice chance to sort of connect with everyone, but also create connectivity for you with all of the people who are invested in Activate and your success. So Activate Anywhere is unique within Activate, as well as probably amongst other programs. So as I mentioned, the goal is to let you build your company from wherever you are, wherever it makes sense. So we don't have agreements with a bunch of labs across the country. It's, you get to find and access the lab space that's best for you and your company. Much of the mentorship and community is virtual. So a lot of it is trying to figure out the best ways to connect with each other when we're not in person. And then, as I said, meeting about once a quarter in person. And this year we'll be in New York City, then we'll be in Berkeley in, I think, end of January, beginning of February, and then in Boston in April. So getting to visit each of the Activate sites, connect with the community there, connect with sort of extended entrepreneurial ecosystems within those communities. And this is the team. So you've already met Jeffrey and I a little bit, but both of us are, my background, I was a hard tech founder or a hard tech leader. I was a CTO at a membrane company for 6 years before joining Activate, PhD in chemical engineering. So I have done many of the same things that you all are working through. And joined Activate because it just felt like the mission of what Activate was trying to do was really important. And it's a ton of fun to get to spend time with all the Activate fellows. So I'll turn it over to Jeffrey, who can share his story.
Thanks, Hannah. So my name is Jeffrey. I also have a technical background. I got my PhD in engineering and public policy from Carnegie Mellon. And then pivoted into science policy, moved out to Sacramento, California, where I currently am, to do a policy fellowship working in the California State Legislature, and ended up kind of developing a career passion around fellowship programs and around professional development, especially for scientists who are trying to do something different than what they were going to do in their academic pursuits. So ran that fellowship program for a while before coming over to Activate at the start of this year to help launch the Anywhere program. Similarly, just Dan, I really love and feel very aligned with the mission of this organization. being a fellows first organization and really prioritizing and supporting all the fellows to grow and build their companies. I put our contact information on these slides for you all, especially as you guys are coming up with, for applicants especially, coming up with any sort of questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any sorts of questions about that. So moving into the application, which is where you guys are all hopefully have all registered for the application. So please do so. If you go to activate.org/apply, you can get registered as kind of a pre-application for the fellowship. The application is open next week, and then you'll have about a month and a half to complete that. They're due on October 31st. This is the timeline. Your applications will be reviewed November, December. I think interviews will take place mainly in January, February, and then finals are announced, and then fellow selection happens in spring. Just wanted to cover a few of the kind of the big frequently asked questions, especially around the Anywhere community for you all who are interested in applying to Activate Anywhere. Again, one thing I'll just say up front is, again, Activate, we're here to support you and your individual success as a fellow. So a lot of these, so one of the big questions we often get is, I live blank place, like 55 miles away from an existing Activate location. Can I still apply to Activate Anywhere? So a couple things is, one part of the Activate Anywhere kind of vision is that we want to supply and provide the network that Activate has to those fellows who are not necessarily located right close to one of these entrepreneurial hubs around New York City, Berkeley, or Boston. That being said, if you are kind of this sort of edge case kind of situation and have questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we can try to advise you on what would be the best path forward in terms of what community to apply to. Secondly, there's often a question asked around what does it mean to have a qualified host lab for you all as Anywhere fellows during your fellowship. We don't have like very strict necessarily requirements around that. One of the things we definitely will continue to advise fellows on, and will advise you on, is to make sure that you identify a host lab space where you're going to be in control of the IP that's generated, and also a place where your company is established outside of the university. Again, that being said, depending on the timeline for graduation and different things like that, you might be within an academic setting for a little bit, you might be in academic incubator space for a bit. All of this, again, we can talk about is negotiable, and will just, again, help advise you to be in the situation that's best for you and your company. So don't fear. During the application process in and of itself, we'll be asking you just to give us kind of regular updates on what you're thinking about in terms of host lab space, but none of that is going to be conditional on the application, on your application success. Sorry. I think that's everything. So I'm going to turn it over to the best part of this talk, which is to turn it over to the fellows. We have 3 fellows here today. Our current fellows, Margaret Lumley, Austin Hickman, and Florian Herrault. I'm gonna turn it first over to Margaret, and we'll have each of them give kind of some short intros and some stories of what they've been doing, and then we'll turn it over to questions. So Margaret, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. I don't know if Florian and Austin feel this way, but it feels a little surreal to be on the other side of this panel. I feel like not that long ago, I was you guys wanting to apply for this fellowship. I'm so happy to be here and share a little bit about my story. Yeah, so my name's Margaret. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Clovis Water, and I'm located in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm originally from California, and as you all probably know on this call, California is pretty much always lacking water, always in a drought. And I've always really been interested in working on challenges in the water and energy space. And it took me a while to figure out exactly what I wanted to do in this area, but I ultimately ended up in the field of electrochemistry, which is a really interesting area of research and is becoming more and more popular as we think about electrification of different industries. So I decided to do my PhD at UW-Madison, joined an electrochemistry research group, and my advisor at the time was starting this new project trying to apply the principles of electrochemistry to water desalination. So it was kind of this perfect hybrid of my interests using electrochemistry to solve water scarcity challenges. So what we've done is essentially build a device that operates just like a traditional rechargeable lithium ion battery, but we actually use that device to take salt ions out of water, and then we convert that salt into other commodity chemicals. So things like caustic soda, bleach, hydrochloric acid. And so the idea is that we've created this really energy efficient way to take salt out of water and use that salt to create commodity chemicals. Some of the issues with water desalination today are that it takes a ton of energy, and it also makes this concentrated waste product called brine that you need to get rid of. And so our technology has a totally different way of operating and can overcome some of these barriers that have been kind of consistent with other desalination methods for the last 50 plus years. In terms of starting Clovis Water, it's not really something that I always dreamed of doing. I didn't really envision myself becoming an entrepreneur when I started grad school, but it was really our tech transfer office at UW-Madison that got me started thinking about, what it would actually look like to start a company. I talked to some other founders in Madison and really became interested in the idea of working at the intersection of science and business. But my biggest motivator really was, thinking about our technology. It's still so early stage, and it's very different from other desalination processes. And so we kind of thought that if we didn't continue to develop this technology, it wouldn't really advance beyond our lab research, and we didn't want that. So I convinced kind of my co-founders, my advisor, and another researcher that we should start Clovis Water. We started thinking about it really in 2020. We incorporated in 2021 and applied for an NSF Small Business Innovation Research Grant in June of last year. So we actually got our SBIR grant before I got the Activate Fellowship. And I mentioned that because I just want to highlight that everyone's starting point is a little bit different when they join the fellowship. Some people have other funding, some people have money from investors, some people have just an idea, and it's really super variable. And I think that's important to know when you go through the application process. So with that said, I actually already had a lab space. I work in a co-working lab space in Madison that was actually started originally for biotech startups, but they let me in, and it's been a really great environment. You can rent just one lab bench and sort of expand as you need to. So I was already here in Forward Biolabs at the time that I applied for the Activate Fellowship program. In terms of why I applied for Activate, it's some of those benefits that Hannah and Jeffrey already mentioned. Really, it was the community. I saw an announcement for the Activate Fellowship on Twitter in 2020, but I wasn't quite ready to apply for the fellowship at that time. And so I sort of kept an eye on it. And then in 2021, they started this Activate Anywhere community. And that was just so perfect for me because I still collaborate with researchers at UW-Madison. And so being able to stay in Madison was really beneficial for me. So, the value of community is something that I can't stress enough. Just having the hands-on mentorship that Activate provides is so unique compared to other programs that are out there. Hannah mentioned we meet every other week. She knows what's going on with the company at any given moment and can direct me to other people within the fellowship and external advisors who have had similar problems or can provide input to help me solve challenges that I'm facing at any given time. And that's something I don't think I would have had access to without the Activate Fellowship program. And then also the community of peers, just people that are going through something similar to you at the same time. It's difficult to find those people in a city like Madison. We have a lot of biotech startups here, but not a lot of other types of startups. And so for me, it's been really great to have other entrepreneurs working in a similar space to just talk to, sometimes commiserate with, just share what we're going through at any given time. And in terms of Activate Anywhere specifically, I mentioned the value of just being able to stay in the city, but I also think something that's unique about our program is just the diversity of our backgrounds. We have people from, Ithaca, New York, you'll hear from Austin, Atlanta, I'm in the Midwest, Colorado, California, so really across the US. And I think that's been really cool just to learn from other fellows, what resources are they taking advantage of in their local communities, and where did their ideas come from, and how has their process been, moving from their academic research lab to now the startup arena, I guess I'll use that word. So I think that's been one of the biggest values. And then also the opportunity to spend time together in person every quarter. So the other fellows meet at their sites in person every week or every other week. And we have a virtual community, but we spend a couple days together every quarter. And I think that's also pretty cool, is you have these few days every quarter where you just sort of immerse yourself in the fellowship experience and touch base with your other fellows and Hannah and Jeffrey, and really, take advantage of that time together. And I think that's really special. And I will stop there and hand it over to Florian or Austin. Who's next?
Thanks, Mario. We'll pass it on.
Yeah.
You say me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, yeah, my name is Austin Hickman. I am in Ithaca, New York, as Margaret said, and I did see a couple other Ithacans post their location in the chat. So yeah, reach out if you'd ever want to meet up and talk more in depth. But yeah, I can talk a little bit about what I'm doing. So my company's name is Soctera, where I'm a co-founder and CEO, and we're developing next generation power amplifiers, so electronic components for 5G and beyond, telecommunications, as well as a whole host of defense applications, including radar networks. And so our innovation is in the materials, at the material level. So we're incorporating aluminum nitride to increase efficiency and thermal performance. Yeah, and so that's the basic overview of the company. Right now, we're located in an incubator on Cornell's campus in Ithaca, and still use a lot of the labs that are available to startups there. And so it's currently just me. And so, that kind of segues into why I applied for Activate, was that it's really hard to go it alone. And so, so I'm currently searching for people to hire and to bring in another co-founder. But what's been great about Activate is that it's really kind of served that role for me over the past several months. So, like I feel like Activate particularly takes a very holistic approach to this whole thing. It's not just, all right, let me see your pitch deck. Like, let's you need to change this. Like, well, let's keep iterating this. Let's get you in front of some VCs and get you some money. All right, get out the door. Which I saw with a lot of places that also, want to take some equity along the way. Whereas with Activate, it's more like, okay, like let's assess these 4 parts of your company. So one of the exercises we did, you can look at your team, your technology, market, and finances. I think I got the 4. Correct me if I'm wrong, but and be like, oh, well, you're really far in terms of the technology, but maybe the team is where, you need to focus a lot of your effort. I can put you in touch with another Activate fellow who, went through a very similar thing as you last year. And so it really looks at all aspects of, not just your company, but where you are as a person and where you're trying to take this. So, I think that's what I really appreciated, is that, I'm sure a lot of you are in a similar situation where, you're coming out of grad school and your, lab grad mates aren't really going to understand what it is you're trying to do. And so you aren't really at the same place as a lot of people around you. And so the Activate Anywhere community specifically brought together a bunch of us that are, trying to do this really hard thing, doing it in a place where there aren't these huge communities of entrepreneurship, and really brought us all together. And so I think we really saw that when we met up for the first time earlier this summer. And, by the end, it seemed like we had known each other for, forever. It was really kind of like summer camp. Well, by the end, after you spent a week together, you all feel like you've been friends forever. So it was really great. And so, I mean, I just started Activate a couple of weeks ago, really officially, at the 1st of August. But yeah, I can already tell, I think it's just going to keep growing. And I think the best is really yet to come because, you know, obviously Activate only lasts 2 years, but you can already see where the relationships with, you know, that people in Activate have with people who have passed through the program and are off with their companies or, you know, left their companies and are doing something else, but you maintain that community well beyond. It's very, you know, readily apparent. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, so that's about it from me. I'll pass it off.
Thanks, Austin. And then last, we have Florian.
Yeah, thanks. So my name is Florian Herrault. I am the CTO and co-founder of a company called PseudolithIC. We are actually located at the UCSB Santa Barbara startup incubator, but we are a truly anywhere company. Our CEO is in Washington, DC. He's also an Activate fellow. And then today we have our first employee actually still lives in North Carolina. So we are distributed, but working well with Zoom and Teams. Our company really aims to develop RF and millimeter wave products for the telecommunication market using what we call heterogeneous integration of semiconductor devices and components. And so, as you know, data consumption is ever increasing. Our goal is to develop products with higher bandwidth and higher efficiency than competing approaches. And specifically, the idea is to use advanced packaging or heterogeneous integration to use high performance semiconductors at the cost and scaling of silicon manufacturing. So before we started PseudolithIC, I worked for about 15 years in various research organizations. My two other co-founders also had significant government and research background. So, you know, fairly limited business experience, maybe none actually, right? and that's one of the reasons we applied to Activate. We felt, you know, we had a lot to learn, and the strength of the educational program is to grow a deep tech startup was very strong. I think, you know, Austin mentioned it. There are some incentives, right? There's a non-equity partnership here, which is quite unique in some of the startup, early startup growth programs, right? Some are called incubators, some are called, you know, catalysts, etc. So that was attractive to us. I think as we get into it, you know, there's just a tremendous network of past members, of people with significant expertise who just want to give back. And that's been, you know, really incredible, something we probably didn't know ahead of time, but that's just so much value. And it's not just about technology or manufacturing or, you know, market, right? There is significant expertise in finance, in IP, in website, IT, you know, things that you have to do to grow your business. And so we are trying to really take advantage of it the best we can and target, you know, specific needs we have and get feedback or get advice. So, you know, that really helps us professionally to grow the company. And I think also personally, right? And both Margaret and Austin mentioned it, but a lot of the fellowship is about personal development. I'd say even more so than company growth, although I want to make sure that you understand that they focus a lot on the company, but they want this to be a sort of a long-lasting effect, right? So whether your company is successful or not, technically and financially, I think everybody, it seems like every cohort member will learn a lot of things and grow through that fellowship. So to me, that's, you know, I mean, we are only 3 months into it, right? I think, and it's just, again, feels like a lot longer and just so many things we've learned. So, you know, I'm a little older than those two guys, but so, you know, it's very diverse group of people, different stages of the company, different background, different experience, and yet we get together and really enjoy it. So that's been fun. Anywhere, I think is a really good community, probably on the strength of Jeffrey and Hannah. You know, they're really amazing mentors. We do meet with them frequently. We really think, well, we always enjoy it. So, you know, it's just been great. And we look forward to seeing them in person in a couple of weeks, of course. And again, sometimes it's, you know, technical discussions. I know with Hannah, we've talked about CapEx versus OpEx models and so on. And so she helped us with their background and how it could apply to our company. And sometimes just about team dynamics, right? We have this person, how do we express, this concern, or how do we, and so, soft skills and etc. Right? So it's just a lot of back and forth and a lot of good feedback. And you take what you need, and yeah, it's been great. So yeah, overall, a lot of fun. So I encourage you to apply, and the application process is fairly easy. The competition is tough. There are a lot of really good people. You'll get to meet some of them if you're a finalist, which was unique, I think, but pretty interesting as well. And yeah, good luck.
Thank you, Florian. So now we're going to move into kind of this time of open Q&A. I'm going to bring up all of our panelists. So I know there's been a lot of questions in the chat, so please keep them coming. But I would encourage you all to maybe direct more questions around like the fellowship experience, maybe around the application process with our fellows here. So happy to, again, continue to answer other logistical or programmatic questions as well. Just to get us started, Florian, Margaret, or Austin, any of you guys want to just comment or share a little bit about how you experienced the application process? Like what was it? What was unique or different about the Activate process? What did you get out of the application experience?
Yeah, I can chime in. So Florian mentioned that the original application is just a written application, and that's pretty straightforward. After that, you go through 3 interviews, and that was pretty intense, I think. So the first one was sort of a shorter 15-minute screening interview with Hannah and some other people from the fellowship. And then the second interview was a little bit longer, and the finalist interview was a 7-minute pitch with an audience of anywhere from 10 to 25 people. So kind of like friends of the fellowship program, other experts in your specific research area to supplement the experience that, other fellowship program managers have, some investors, just a huge range of people. So it's a 7-minute presentation followed by about 15-ish minutes of Q&A. My Q&A session, it really ran the gambit of types of questions that were asked. But I think something that's really unique is there is support as you get ready for that final interview. So I met with Hannah and Jeffrey twice to practice my pitch, go through it with them, get feedback, and really tailor my presentation to something that would resonate with my specific audience. And I think that was super, super valuable. And I still take some of those lessons with me as I continue to give presentations. And I think that's pretty unique. Once you get to that final stage, it doesn't really feel like you're on opposite sides of the table anymore. It's like the fellowship team, wants to do everything they can to help you to get through this final interview process and get into the program. And it really feels like you're already a part of the community when you get to that finalist stage. And I think that's pretty cool.
Anybody else?
No, I'll add that maybe there was also a meet the finalists event, so before the selection, which again, I think is pretty unique. Maybe 40 people attended the Zoom meeting or the Teams. I don't know what we use, but that was pretty cool. And some of them I met at that time and were selected, some didn't, but everybody was really talented. Again, very diverse set of people, age, background, locations, and I think that was fun. That was really fun. Makes you feel good.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add. Just that, yeah, I really enjoyed the Meet the Fellows event, and I could tell just from that it was really a lot of other talented people that, a community I'd like to be a part of. So.
All right, thank you. So we have a couple hands raised. We'll first go to Brittany, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this webinar. I really appreciate it. My question is kind of related to the host lab kind of description. So how did you guys go approaching any lab? And so I understand that a lot of it is through like the university, but how do you distinguish that line of like, this is not university research, this is for me, and I'm jumping off with this. So how did you like go about that, and like what kind of conversations happened with that?
I can comment on that. So yeah, I feel like each university or, situation for each fellow is different. Some of us are coming straight out of universities, whereas others, like I know like Florian is talking with HRL for a company for IP. So yeah, I think it really varies and everybody's got their own situation. But yeah, I know like coming out of the university, like me, it was very important to distinguish that this is a separate effort from the university, because you want to, and it is mostly related to IP, right? Of like, if we generate new IP, this is not the universities, this is the startup companies. But yeah, so I think it's really important to have that in mind. And, some universities have incubators set up for that type of thing. I think some others may or may not, but usually there's some sort of process with like the tech license. You could probably talk to somebody in like the tech transfer office if you were, working with a university, who would be able to tell you like how to draw those lines.
Yeah, I think, as a company, you have to pay to use a lab space or to pay to use a clean room, right? And that's a little different. So that's the mechanism you can use to really differentiate the company work from your grad school work, or or whatever you do in your current role.
I don't have anything to add, so ditto to what Austin and Florian said.
All right, thank you all. Next question, I see Kyle. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, Hannah, Jeffrey, thanks for hosting. Florian, Margaret, Austin, thanks for your time. Ton of questions, but I guess one that's very pertinent right now is about the application. How do you three think that you all distinguished yourselves among this very competitive crowd? I mean, there's 80 people on this call, maybe 10 people would get selected as the fellows. So what do you think that you did, and what you would look for as people maybe reviewing these applications as well, that would set a company apart or a fellow apart from someone else? Thanks.
You want to start, my guy? Okay, I'll start. I think what you have to think through carefully is, why would this fellowship be an inflection point in your company growth, right? Why is it needed? And so what we tried to do was, and similar to Margaret, we actually had, SBIR funding already. And so it, I mean, the money is good, but it wasn't just about the money. And so it's like, okay, how do we take advantage of it? So we really tried to explain how a 2-year roadmap of our company would take advantage of the fellowship and the learnings we could do. I don't know if that was successful, that's why we were picked, but I felt that was a really good exercise to really see, well, do we want to invest time into this fellowship? Well, because it's a two-way street. You have to invest time every week to take advantage of it, right? So it's not just money for free, right? So to me, that would be the thing I would try to think through is, well, they do all these different things. How do I leverage them to the best for the company growth and my professional growth as well, or personal growth as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Kyle. And I agree with everything Florian said, really emphasizing what you think you will get out of the fellowship and why it will really help to support your growth at this stage. I think the other thing that's really important is to think about the impact of what you're developing. As Florian said, it's a two-way street. You have to invest in the fellowship and they invest in you. And it's not so much about the technology, in my opinion, but about the way that you can convey the impact of what you're developing. And something they emphasize a lot in the program is the value of storytelling. And so in your application, I think it's important to really focus on what you're building, what motivated you to build that thing, why you're the best person to be working on it at this stage, and what is the support that Activate can provide to help you get to that next level, like Florian mentioned. And I think having that mindset, the fellowship application, the written part is pretty short. It's a 2-page technical proposal. It's not like a 15-page research grant that you're used to writing. And that's so hard to convey all of that information in such a short document. So I would also say, get other people to edit it for you, look it over, see what insights you can get. And people who are a little removed from academia, I think could be beneficial too. Just really trying to, highlight those things that I mentioned.
Yeah, and I'll just add, just kind of, I guess this kind of emphasizes what Margaret and Florian have said, and that, the companies that join Activate Anywhere, right? We're the first cohort, and you see companies at so many different stages, like all the way from, it's been established, IP license, like they're in a lab setting, to companies that have none of those things and are still like, setting up the bank account and those types of things. So I think that, shows you that it's not about like having the best company right now when you're when you're applying, but like the other two have said, showing that you have a vision for it, that there is an impact down the road. Because Activate's not looking to, see who can get to merger, like, or getting acquired within 2 years, right? Like, it's more of a long-term vision. So I think the emphasis is less on like showing that you have all the answers right now, but more so that, you can see the impact, and here's how I plan to get there.
Thank you. Those are great answers. I just wanted to open space to Hannah if you wanted to share anything from the perspective of the program.
I think the answers that Florian, Margaret, and Austin gave are all completely true. I think the impact piece that Austin started to touch on, I think, is really important, of showing like where are you headed and sort of why is this important to the world. I think, and it's hard to sort of project so far in advance, but I think just think about like, why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve, and where is it headed? And then the other piece I would say for the application is being able to describe your technology and why it's important and innovative in a way that's not jargony. Like, I'm not going to be an expert in whatever your thing is. Sure, I have a PhD in chemical engineering, can get up to speed really quickly, but like whatever your thing is, you're going to know more about. So figuring out how to communicate, why is it different from whatever else is out there? What stage is it at? Like, how far have you proven it out, and what is still left to be proven? And why is it important to somebody? Like, why is it going to fit into the market or to a customer or to a process or whatever? Being able to communicate those clearly and concisely, that differentiates a lot of applications, because some of them you read and you're like, I have no idea. Either this is so complicated the way they've written this because they've written it for somebody who's a PhD in their thing, or I like don't know why this is important or what their technology is going to enable. So figuring out the best way to communicate that, I think, is really important.
Thanks, Anna. We'll go to our next question from Patricia. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello, thank you guys all for the seminar. Actually, the previous questions were really good, so let me try and think of a new one. One thing that I guess I was curious about, if anyone can comment more on, I guess, how they transition their companies to like what would be considered the next stage of the company development. So like, I know some things are appropriate to study at the lab scale, but after a point, you're going to need to like move into a larger facility, do larger scale testing. If anyone can just kind of like share how Activate has helped to guide them through that process, or that's general question.
Yeah, so one thing is, I don't think any of the three of us have actually gotten to the point where we've moved to like, we're like, oh, we don't have enough room for this, our test equipment's so large, like we need a warehouse, so we're still a little bit earlier than that, but I think Activate has helped. It was like, I remember, like, just to give you a vivid example, before I started Activate, I almost like hesitated to tell people, yeah, I'm CEO of Socterra, instead of like, oh, I was still actually part-time postdoc at Cornell. So I would still say that because it was hard to like get into that mindset of like, I'm running this company now. And so Activate, like bringing us together, like us all talking about it. And, you know, it helped me get the vision for where this is going as a business and how to differentiate that from where the lab I left is going with the technology, right? So I think in the early stage, it's just as much about mentality as it is about getting that physical space in which you're going to build this thing. Yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, and I'll add, you know, like Austin, I'm not in a manufacturing facility yet. We're doing bench scale experiments in beakers with electrodes that are like 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And we've been doing those kinds of experiments for a long time. And for me, I think Activate has kind of been, not intentionally, but like just the motivator, the kick in the butt I need to really try to get to the next phase of like, okay, it is time to move away from these super small scale experiments and try to build a prototype. And I presented a timeline for building that prototype in my quarterly meeting. And so now I said it out loud and I have accountability to actually get that done. And for me, that's a really big thing because as the CEO, nobody's really keeping track of what you're doing or your timeline. It's really all on you. But having just some external accountability, I think, is really, really helpful. And then when I am ready to move to a larger space, I know that I have a community of other fellows that I can talk to about that transition and how they made it happen and any lessons that they can share. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just add that before you think about you know, scaling up, there is, I think, a step before that, which would be defining your minimum viable product, which is a step further than doing a prototype, you know, to have. So all of us are still, I think, in that space of defining what that product might look like. And I think a lot of the, you know, university incubators or facilities can actually help you get to that product using a combination maybe of suppliers, vendors, and so on, right? So there are a lot of steps to get to before before scaling up, and actually we figured that out during the fellowship. We were, I think, a lot more bullish about going into our own space and buying tools and stuff, and I think, you know, investors look at a few different things ahead of that. So that's our personal mindset right now.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to Gentry next, and then panelists. I think let's just do one answer per question for these last few, so we can.
And this might not even be appropriate for the panelists. Or put it this way: hi, we have a national security focused company, and we came out of a federally funded research lab. Who backs this program? And we have certain concerns that our technology or IP might be exposed to non-NATO, non-US companies. Do I need to worry about that, this program?
So I can jump in on that one, Jeffrey. We are backed by a combination of philanthropic funds and US government funds. So that's where our sources of money come from. As far as your technology being exposed to non-natives, you do not have to talk about anything. You will sign non-disclosures with Activate, and so like Activate itself will be covered. There is the possibility of non-US citizens working for Activate, and certainly the possibility of non-US citizens being fellows. So you do not have to talk about your technology to the other fellows, but it will certainly hamper your experience if you feel very sort of unable to really share where you're going and what you're doing. Like, we don't have a lot of in-depth technical conversations where we're talking about anybody's IP as a big group, because it's just not that useful for Florian to be weighing in on desalination electrochemistry membranes. But there is the possibility. So, you know, we can talk more about it specifically if you want offline, but I think like it is possible. The program is designed to have a lot of interaction between folks. And some of them are not US citizens. So
awesome. Hannah, what's your email really quick? I'll email you so I don't use up
I'll just put it in the chat. Jeffrey had it on the slide, but
awesome.
I'll just put it in the chat so everybody has it.
Thank you, friends. Thanks for your time. And this sounds awesome.
Next we have Gabriel. We can't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Great.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks for this. I guess I just had a quick question. So there's the different imperatives, and it seems like if kind of my technology could potentially fit into different ones, does like choosing Activate Anywhere versus something like Activate New York City fit? Like, does it matter which imperatives for which Activate program, or is that kind of irrelevant to the application?
I can take this one as well. So there are some nuances around the sponsorship for some of the communities, in New York being one of them. So Activate Anywhere is sponsored. Many of our fellows are sponsored by the NSF. Some are sponsored by other philanthropic sources or otherwise, but Activate Anywhere has probably the broadest set of technologies that it can support. Activate New York has a very strong partnership with NYSERDA, who's very interested in carbon removal, I'll call it, CO2 removal. And so that's one where we often, fellow companies that are working in CO2 removal often fit really well in New York City. If you are a CO2 company who wants to be located somewhere else, you certainly would also fit in Activate Anywhere. So again, feel free to email me if you want to talk more about your specific situation and whether it fits into some other version of what I just said, but there are some nuances around it that we can help you navigate.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Next we have, apologies if I'm mispronouncing Mazier.
Hi, good afternoon, guys. Can you hear me? I just have a question regarding, is there any specific phase of the project or idea that this program is favored to? And is there any specific subject, like there are some programs that are favoring against carbon capture, water scarcity, or like high-tech AI type technologies? Is there any specific subject that this program is favored to?
So I'll answer the second one first. We are focused on hard tech or deep tech, which is kind of a vague term, which is why on our website we list a bunch of industries that sort of encompasses. So there's 8 industries on the website, I think. If you think you have a hard tech technology that fits outside of those industries, we can talk about whether it fits into Activate, but generally we're looking for things that have the potential to have a large impact on our world. Much of that is climate change or energy transition related, but not all of it. We generally do not support software only companies. There are a couple exceptions to that, particularly if you're making an impact in a hardware space. And so some of the challenges facing hardware deep tech companies are similar to yours, then that may be an exception. But generally, if it's a software play, we're probably not the best program. Similarly, if it's like a pharmaceutical discovery or something very biotech oriented, we tend to have less of a network there. That's not, like we have some companies that kind of fall into that, but I would say not quite as many. As far as stage, you need to be early enough where Activate can be useful in your journey. And so the hard and fast rule we have is you can't have raised more than 2 million in dilutive capital. There are some folks who get through the application and we're like, look, this is a great company, you're great people, this is fantastic for the world, you're too far along for you to need us and for us to be helpful. So like we're happy to see you succeed, but we're not the right program for you. There's basically nobody, you have to have shown that. Usually you have to have done some proof of concept. Like you can't be an idea on a napkin or in your head. It has to have been actualized in some way. I would say it's like the earliest version that we've supported.
All right, let's get these last two squeezed in. Blake.
Okay, can you all hear me? Just
yes.
Real quick. All right. So first to start off, just like a little bit of like clarification. So I'll start by saying, are you all still in the Activate Fellowship? The 2-year window, yes, okay. And then it seems like, during the 2-year process, you're meeting bi-weekly with what I think is your cohort. I think I read that right. It seems that you would form a pretty intimate relationship with your cohort. Are you all still in contact and plan to be in contact with them, you know, after the activate process, or how does that relationship, how does that evolve for you all?
So I'll take this one. Activate Anywhere really started, this year, right? So all of us are pretty much three months into the fellowship only. So, we're still friends, but I think you really see the value of the program. So a lot of the former members, who have graduated from the fellowship 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, come back and give seminars and, share their experience and really are, all of them are like, well, this is my email, contact me if you need, right? And you can even meet with them in person, go on their site and stuff. So the strength of the network is really real and long lasting. So, I think that's very valuable.
All right, and then last question from Matt.
Yeah, hi, I had two quick ones. The first one would be, in your narrative, how big a role does like your kind of, I understand these are kind of social good projects, but like how big is the narrative of like your addressable market, like the commercialization aspects, play a role in the application process? And also, do you have like a published rubric on like how you're assessed and how you differentiate who gets in, who doesn't get selected?
So I can answer about kind of the addressable market question. We don't have like a hard and fast, your market has to be X number of dollars. We do look for technologies that can have an impact on the world, like a sizable impact. Like it can be a very good thing, but if it's only going to impact, 200 people because it's some rare thing, then it's probably not something where Activate makes a lot of sense. I recognize that's a real fuzzy answer. And so, like I said, we have some companies who have smaller addressable markets than others, but it has to kind of meet the sort of field test of like, is this something that's going to have sizable impact on the world? As far as a rubric, I don't think we've published one. I'll turn that question over to Jeffrey. I don't think we have a rubric. I think we have a lot of what are we looking for in applications, which is on the activate.org/apply website, or in some of the like published other webinars that you can see more in detail. We also have office hours, which I think Jeffrey can maybe share the link to. I know I'm putting Jeffrey on the spot, but then we can follow up and share some of the other ways you can get information about the application process.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. So yeah, office hours will be taking place every Friday throughout this application process for questions like that, Matt. And then yeah, please visit the FAQ for any sorts of those sorts of questions related to what Activate is looking for. We don't have a strict rubric that's published right now through the website, but something to consider. So thank you for that question. Great webinar. Thank you all so much for the questions. Thank you, Florian, Margaret, and Austin for being with us and sharing a little bit of your story and insights. I'll invite y'all to share your emails in the chat if anyone would like to follow up with you all about anything that you all have shared. And then, yeah, and this webinar has been recorded. It'll be shared with you all soon after this webinar. But otherwise, I'm trying to think of a good way to close other than just thank you all so much. We really look forward to reviewing and reading all your applications.
Great to see so many people here. Good luck, everyone. Yeah, and Jeffrey, feel free to reach out with questions or ask Hannah or Jeffrey for our email addresses if you'd miss them in the chat.